All right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. This is Frank Klesitz. I am live from a Portland hotel room. So I hope you enjoy a little bit of the background today. I'm here with Greg Harrelson, and Greg Harrelson is our guest today. You're watching a video on how to onboard a real estate agent. So if you're building a team or a brokerage and you want to hire a real estate agent to work for you, whether they're going to go into listings or buyer sides, Greg's going to share all that. Whether they're licensed or unlicensed, you want to hire someone and bring somebody on to help you with your buyers and sellers. You're going to learn how to correctly onboard to them today is probably, I would argue, anecdotally, or maybe scientifically, Greg, probably one of the best people in the country to do this. You can make your own judgment after you watch the whole interview of how well Greg's onboarding processes are set up. But a couple of housekeeping things before I get started. You can go to keepingitreal.com, all right, where you can watch all the previous shows, okay? Keepingitreal.com. You can also go to the Real Geeks Facebook page to watch all the previous shows. We post them on there in the Real Geeks Facebook group. Yeah, I think we post them in there as well. Also on iTunes. So if you're driving around, you want to listen to the audio, you can go to iTunes. Apple Podcasts is now actually, and go check it out on there. And if you put your email address in on Keeping It Real, we'll only update you with notifications of new shows. So you can get notified when we have a new show, what the topic is if you want to tune in. And with regard to the replay, since we're using YouTube Live as our platform here, once this is all done, it's recording right to YouTube. The replay will be right here on the screen, right here on YouTube, so you can watch it forever. So I'm Frank Klesitz. I'm with Viral Marketing. We have Greg Harrelson with Century 21, and get ready for an awesome, awesome interview. Greg, you ready to get started on agent onboarding today?
Yeah, let's get going. It's not the subject of lead generation, but I tell you what, it is equally important if you're going to have a company, a brokerage, a team, whatever you whatever you want to call it. Onboarding is something we need to be paying attention to. So I think it's good to go deep dive on this.
I think it's also good too that if you aren't onboarding an agent and it's just you're onboarding yourself to your own business, this is a good way to get yourself up to speed too. So you can kind of maybe look at it in that light too, right, Greg?
Yeah, that's an excellent way to look at it.
How to onboard yourself?
Yeah, how to onboard yourself. That could be a whole different show. But what just crossed my mind, Frank, when you said that is, I think it's very important to understand most people develop an onboarding process within the organization because they feel like they need to be more efficient. They need to be save time, leverage automation in order to get people up to speed. But I want to set the tone today and say we should be creating good onboarding systems because that allows the person that you're onboarding, it gives them the best chance for success early on in their process. So a lot of times we build onboarding systems for us to, we want better systems in our office, make our office more efficient. But what it really does is it makes the agent that you're onboarding more efficient and it helps them getting up and running. So it's more than just saving you time as a company. It's actually helping you get to revenue faster.
Absolutely.
So I just plant that seed there.
Greg, you started selling real estate when you were how old?
I think around 23, 24.
And how many agents would you say you have trained in your career?
Oh gosh. I mean,
I think it's over 1,000.
I've maybe. Yeah, maybe.
It's definitely pushing that number toward that.
And the word train could be subjective. Like, it's like at what level, I haven't had 1,000 one-on-one clients, in my career. But when it comes to all of my agents, as well as other things that I've done that outside of my company, group trainings and things like that, it's been quite a few.
So the very first thing, somebody wants to get into real estate. They don't even have their license.
Yes.
They have a career change, a life change, and they want to get into real estate. Or you want to hire someone who's just looking to maybe go from pharmaceutical sales and get into real estate, or go from driving trucks to get into real estate, or going from being a teacher to get into real estate, from any of the professions they're getting into the business, which is very popular now, given the economy. What's the very first step? What do they do?
Well, the first step would be, let's assume that they've passed their test at the state level and they've got their license. So the first step is going to be kind of like an HR scenario where we've got to go ahead and make sure that their license gets from the state and becomes active within the company. Then they're going to most likely have to sign up for the MLS, assuming it's required. It's not required in every MLS, but in our area it is. So they're going to then go in through the MLS, and then they've got to do all these little things that nobody likes to do, which is, write a bio for the company website, or a few bios for different company websites, get a nice picture to put on websites, all of that stuff. I call that to me is like stuff that I don't want to be involved in. It's like chasing an agent to get their bio so we can actually start putting it on the website is one of the hardest things to get agents to do. You have to actually police that task quite aggressively to get them to do that. Just because they don't see the importance, they don't understand that.
So just getting their internet presence set up after they get licensed.
Oh, that's harder than the real estate training, because they're wanting to get going. They want to get going. I need to make a sale. I want to learn real estate. And so a lot of times people just overlook this and say, I'll get back to it. But then they get involved in so many other things, they never get back to it. So then the company has some web designer or somebody has incomplete task on their desk all the time. So that's really the first thing that has to be done. Internet presence, legal within the company, contract signed, get them into a contracts class, all that stuff. I call that more HR type of onboarding.
There's a lot there. Can we break down HR a little bit? So they get licensed.
Yes.
They meet with somebody, get a picture taken, get them set up with their online presence. Go a little deeper on that. Give me a few things for online presence.
Yeah. Well, let's go with they get licensed. Well, that license has to then be put towards active at the company. So somebody's going to have to communicate with the real estate commission to let them know that this person's now going to be at this company. So then the company can be issued to that brokerage.
Got it.
Let's not underestimate that. Has to happen. Then they have to then sign up for the MLS. They've got to sign up for a class to be able to become a member of the MLS. They've got to pay their dues to become a member of an MLS. Then they've got the internal documents that you might give them, an independent contractor agreement, the office policy, making sure that there's a commission agreement and it's very clear, it's all signed off, and all of that stuff is ratified and put in the proper places and filed properly. So we're not even talking about internet presence yet. All of this stuff has to be done.
Greg, where does someone go to get their first commission agreement written, independent contractor agreement written, and those 3 legal documents set up when they're hiring their first agent?
Yeah, so somebody that doesn't have this, or hiring your first agent. I would probably, I've never done this, but I'd probably go to Google and just actually Google it, and you're probably going to see many, many different examples. We've had ours for years and years and years, but I've seen dozens of different independent contractor agreements, and I would just recommend that you look at the boilerplate ones that you can find off the internet. If you have a friend that's within another company, ask them, if you have an owner of another company, ask them to share the document. But what I would recommend is that you read it thoroughly, and then you think about the things that maybe you do not apply based on you don't have those certain systems. And then think about what you would want to, in addition, and then have an attorney kind of write one up for you. So I would do my homework on finding those independent, and then I would take it to an attorney to finalize.
In your many years of wisdom and experience in those agreements, are there any specific clauses you can give the audience where it's like, I've kind of learned the hard way. I've learned this is a good one to put in there that you're kind of proud of, that's helped you out of some jams and done well? Are there any specific things in those agreements that you think would be benefit for the audience to think about when they're onboarding an agent?
Yeah, I would. The 2 things that come to my mind is be crystal clear within the document on how you're going to handle when an agent leaves, how you're going to handle the open pendings, the current pendings.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of times there's going to be commission disputes. So some companies take a very aggressive approach and say that if you leave and there's an open pending, that you forfeit all of that money. And that can be legal. I'm not an attorney, but that can be legal if it's disclosed properly and everybody agrees to that on the front end. I don't take an aggressive stance like that. I don't recommend that, but I want you to know that some companies take a very aggressive stance like that. Some companies will have a little bit different approach, and they'll say if it's in pending that you'll get your full commission. Some contracts are going to say if you leave and it's pending, you can still be involved and communicate with that client. And some people take the stance, no, don't ever talk to the client again. So having clarity on how you want to handle the pending contracts, how you want to handle active listing agreements, go ahead and just clarify that. We know, and I think in every state, maybe there's a state this is not the case. Listing agreements are really owned by the broker. The broker in charge is really the one that is the owner of the listing agreements. So no one really can leave and take those listings with them. But the agents, some of them know and they still attempt to do it, and some of them don't know and they start calling. And technically, if they leave the company and start calling their past listings, they're technically creating an ethics violation because they're contacting someone else's client. It's much easier to just get all that clarified in your independent contractor agreement. However you want to do it, get it clarified so there's no questions.
Greg, excellent advice. Excellent advice. Give us one more clause, one more thing we need to think about in the commission agreements or the onboarding independent contractor agreements when you onboard an agent. What else comes to mind?
A different what? A different.
Is there any other clauses, any other sections of the agreement you think that people should be looking out for, or to talk to their attorney with?
Yeah, I would. If you're a company that's going to produce some leads, then you want to maybe clarify with company generated leads, whose database is that?
Who owns the database?
Who owns that database? Yeah. Because so what's happening is there's big teams out there, they get Zillow accounts, or maybe they're not doing Zillow right now, they're doing something else. They're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on paid leads. They're using them in the CRM. Okay. And then so in the CRM, then an agent says, oh, I'm getting ready to leave. So then what do? They export they export whatever they can. Even if you don't give them export capabilities, what they're likely going to do is go one by one and screenshot and take that data. Okay, so if you have a very crystal clear, paragraph that discusses this, then all you have to do is once a month, you could go in and you can search recent sales and listings to see if any of those things match up by name, and you can see if they're actually doing transactions with people that originated from your database that they took from you. So that would be company generated business that they then take and then they make sales. And assuming that your agreement says they can't do that, then there's a remedy to go kind of audit that. Now, if they have their own database they're putting into your system, that's a whole different ballgame. I'm talking about company generated leads.
Got it. So HR stuff, keep going. So we have all the contracts signed, we have agreements signed, they got their license, they got their bio set up, online presence set up. What else kind of fits inside HR as we move on to the next milestone of the agent onboarding?
I say contracts class is HR. We use .loop, so we would have .loop training. So let's just assume we got 3 components to our onboarding process. We got the HR that we're going to want to complete within the first 5 or 6 days. We want that done. We do not want this dragging along. We want this complete. Okay. And by the way, I know that you'll geek out on this stuff. You like to nerd out on these things, checklists and stuff like that. We use like smart sheets, and every single detail and every single task and expectation we have is on a smart sheet, and that smart sheet's very active. So as soon as an agent comes in and gets put in that smart sheet, we know that these 3 emails need to fire off. This text needs to be sent to this person, and that's handled by a virtual assistant. So they're actually managing all this, and the agent doesn't even know that it's the virtual assistant that's constantly reminding them, hey, I didn't get that bio yet. I didn't get this picture yet. So we've got them in the background, kind of making sure that they're pushing the agent to get all that complete within the first, say, 5 to 7 days. So that would be kind of like phase one is HR. Then phase two, is going to be about tools and resources. Okay. So for instance, .loop. .loop would be an example. We do use .loop. So what's going to happen is after they get HR, we want to immediately get them into the .loop training. So we're going to have multiple videos that are already sitting in a course type of scenario.
Did .loop create this already? They're already created?
No, we create this.
Oh, you created them. Okay.
Yeah, because it's our best practices, right? It's how we use .loop. So I've had a staff member go in who's a master of .loop, and then she goes in and says, this is how you do this. Click here, open this, do this, do this, do that. So for in between, or stage two is all of those types of programs. We need them to know what is .loop. When do you use .loop? How do you submit a listing? How do you submit a contract? Here's the checklist that you have to use to submit a .loop listing. You have to have all these things. You put it in a .loop, then boom, hit the button. You'll be in compliance. If you're missing something, there'll be somebody that's going to see that, and they're going to kick it back to you until this is complete. But they're going to know all that stuff. So we want to make sure that they have all of that. Now that stuff right there, probably going to be a week. If they're really motivated, they could get all that stuff done simultaneously as they're doing that. Because I don't want .loop training to keep them from getting involved in real estate transactions. I am okay with them not being able to do real estate until HR is complete. But phase two is where we got the tools and the systems. We may run 2 onboarding scenarios at the same time. We'll get them into the tools and systems onboarding, and simultaneously, a few days later, we'll kick them off on the agent training onboarding, which is going to be the stage 3, which is the coaching aspect. And that's going to last about 90 days. So we've got the onboarding for the HR. We've got the hypothetically .loop type of scenarios. Simultaneously, we're running the coaching onboarding. And most of this onboarding is going to be it's built out into courses. So, I might be, it's going to be videos that I created, not the .loop. I wouldn't have created that. That would have been staff that would have created that type of onboarding, those videos. But I would have created more of the training videos, which is, I should say, on the onboarding training, as I said to you earlier, Frank, I have kind of segmented our onboarding based on a conversation that I have with an agent when they first come to the business. For instance, if I have an agent that says, hey, look, I don't really want to work buyers. I'd really like to learn how to list property and find listings. Then when I put them in the agent training onboarding, they are going to start with seller focused onboarding. If they say, hey, I really want to work with buyers, or I know that they need to make a commission fast, so more likely they need to work with the buyers, then I will start them on the buyer training onboarding course. Now they will then circle back and end. If they start on buyer, they're going to circle back and take the seller. If they start on seller, they're going to circle back and take the buyer. But depending on how we think that they're going to progress or start their career, we will choose which way or which onboarding to kick them off on.
That's great. Okay. Couple questions before we go into what's in the training.
Okay.
How many agents do you maybe currently onboard right now in a given month through these processes?
Just on onboarding, maybe 10 to 15. Okay. 10 to 15.
Are they all on their own tracks? Like are they going through like structured as a group where you have like a little semester starting as a group, or are they all just kind of on their own pace throughout the training?
They're all on their own pace. So we could start one tomorrow.
So that's interesting to me. Did you ever decide, were you ever doing like them through in groups and then you switched to everyone at their own pace?
Mm-mm.
Everyone went their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
It was, yeah. And so, but when we built out an onboarding system, then it was necessary to do it like this because this is what we need to do for scale. A lot of people would say, well, they chunk them, right? Well, then what ends up happening is I get in 3 different markets or multiple offices, then it's going to require more staff to be able to say, okay, I've got these 5 people that are going to focus on this. Gary's going to focus on these 5 people. And then 3 weeks later, we're going to start this person, with this group. So to me, there was a delay. There was a delay if John Doe came in today and had to wait for the next group to be assembled. Like most people don't have that many people coming in that they can create another group every day. I wanted onboarding to start on day 1. I didn't want there to be any delay in onboarding.
So if an agent comes on, they probably get invited into this checklist of videos. I guess my question is, could theoretically someone go through all the onboarding and not have to talk to any staff or any handholding? Like how?
Yes.
I guess let me ask the question a different way.
Okay.
How much human labor, wages, salary, like how much people is helping with the onboarding from that cost? Have you been able to offload all that to purely just like videos and checklists to get an agent up to speed? Or do you have like just a little, you said you had like one VA helping you. That's pretty incredible.
So my whole onboarding department is managed by 2 virtual assistants, but really 1 virtual assistant.
So one virtual assistant manages the onboarding for 10 agents a month, backed up with all of the videos and the checklists.
Yeah, but yes. But I'm like 10 is like little. I think she could do 100.
Greg, that's incredible.
Yeah, but let's dig
keep deeper on that.
Yeah, let's dig deeper because I don't want I really don't want I want to make sure we paint the picture. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the answer is yes, and I think it'd probably take 2 VAs and we could do 100 a month. Okay, but we got to get to like when somebody is complete with onboarding, where are they in the stage? I think that's important.
Well, I wanted to ask that question if you're doing groups or one by one. So that's kind of insightful for the audience because this is in your head very well. But like you have 10 people going through watching videos, they go through the HR stuff, which you said some of the contract training you keep under the HR module. Now, once they understand contracts, they understand .loop, they signed all the commission agreements, they signed the agent independent contract agreement. Now they get to kind of take a path. They're going to learn tools and systems, which applies to everyone. But while they're learning tools and systems, they can go down a buyer agent path. Yes. They can go down a listing agent path.
Yes.
Are there other paths?
No.
Listing or buyer, they can choose.
Yeah. Because think about where we are in our career right now. Okay. Yeah. So we don't need to break it further down into just we're either going to go and talk about listings or we're going to talk about buyers. So it's either I'm going to start the conversation first about buyers or I'm going to start the conversation first about sellers. So that's typically a question that's going to be asked of me or one of the people that recruited an agent. The VA is going to say to one of if the recruiter is going to designate to the virtual assistant through Slack, hey, this new agent came on. So they're going to just Slack the VA. This is the name. This is their commission split. This is their telephone number, their email, and start them on buyer training. And then that's it. Boom. It's going to trigger. That VA is then going to put that into the smart sheet. And as soon as she puts that person in the smart sheet, and boom, all this stuff is going on. So she's not going to send an individual email to our web designer to say, hey, John Doe just joined our company. As soon as they put that into Smartsheet, that email gets fired off to the web person automatically.
So let me ask you this. You said
go ahead.
90 days. You said this triggers a 90-day training. Is there like a lesson a day? Like
you could actually do it faster. You could do it. I designed it for 90 days, but the real aggressive motivated people, they get it done probably in 30 to 40 days, but it was designed about a video a day, probably 90 days, but not Saturday and Sunday. I'd say there's 60 videos or 45 videos, somewhere in that range.
So you brought, once they get through HR, you essentially have 60 lessons you broke it up into,
Mm-hmm.
arguably about 60 lessons. And each
Yeah,
lesson has
I
something,
think 45 would be more accurate, but yes.
45 lessons with an assignment for each lesson. And, they could probably do one a day, but they could just be crazy and do it all really quickly. Depends upon the person. Got to meet them where they're at.
Not all of them are assignments, but yes, there are sometimes there's assignments.
Wow.
And so here's another thing, for me to throw a question to myself, that I think needs to be answered here is, okay, well, where are they in their level of learning when they're done with onboarding? Here's my mindset. The entire onboarding process was built to make sure that Greg Harrelson doesn't have to repeat himself over and over again. Meaning, we might have some training on best practices for online lead conversion. And maybe there's 3 different videos on online lead conversion. And those best practices are best practices that we're going to police within our operations. Like, this agent needs to know that this is how they're going to get their ROI up. This is how they're going to have really nice conversion and be able to make sales, right? At the same token, everything that I'm saying, because it's a best practice, I'm prepping them that at some point when they start getting lead flow, that these are the expectations we're going to have of them. And we are going to be policing those, those activities to make sure that they're in compliant or meeting our expectations, assuming that this is a company generated lead that we are going to be giving them. Okay. So that coaching doesn't change, Frank. That coaching doesn't change. So I don't need, because that coaching doesn't change, I don't need to be repeating myself, because it doesn't matter which agent it is, no matter what experience they have, I'm going to be coaching them on lead conversion. So what I found is, over the years, I was coaching the same subject over and over and over and again. And I realized, why am I not just doing this on video? So the entire onboarding coaching is taking away the repetition, the conversation that we have to constantly do over and over again. I built that into like an onboarding course, and that's what we use. Now, at the same token, I still have every Tuesday, has nothing to do with onboarding. Every Tuesday I do a coaching call. It's over Zoom with all the agents in my office. I'm also pushing other content based on things that I feel is relevant to talk to the agents about. And so they're also getting all that additional coaching that's going to be more current. It's going to be based on what Greg is seeing in the market right now. And what I think, like, I'm coaching everybody right now that the conversations in the market has shifted, and the market shifts is a lagging. When we see sales or listings change, that's a lagging indicators. The leading indicator is communication, the conversation change. I said the conversation's already shifted. So we know that the conversation in the real estate industry, buyers and sellers, has shifted. So we know that their activities are going to shift, and we know we're going to see some shift in results. That doesn't mean it's going to crash, but I'm training the heck out of my agents right now on that. That would be an example of something that couldn't be in onboarding, because that would be
it's not evergreen.
Sensitive.
Correct.
It's not evergreen. So there you go.
So that's the language. So you had to sit down when you created your onboarding. Here's the takeaway, everyone. Greg wrote out all the lessons that stand a test of time.
Yes.
Right? That no matter what really happens with technology, or maybe they're using a different platform or software, these lessons stay the same. And you came up with about 45 of them. So you never have to repeat yourself again under those fundamentals to onboard an agent. I have a question for you.
That's right.
How often do you change these videos? I mean, how long have these videos been there since you recorded them that you haven't had to change for your agent onboarding? I
mean, there's some videos there that have been there probably 3 to 4 years. And then there are some that I insert, that are newer. Sometimes I do it just because my hair is getting more gray. Some of the videos look like I'm at a glamour shot. I've got, I'm 20 pounds less weight. I got less gray hair.
That's funny. And so true. Yeah. For all of us.
I've got my white pad with my magic marker. I'm drawing on, I got to get that video out of here.
Yeah. Shot on the flip cam back in the day.
Yeah. That you sent me from viral.
Yep. So this is very interesting. I just want to break this down for the audience. Very first step, someone has to get their license. All right. Then they go through HR that takes about a week. And you have good procedures there that you don't want anyone doing any work until the legal stuff and the HR stuff is handled. Then they have a track on tools. Now, tools, you're telling me, is independent of which path they go down, whether they're a buyer or seller. Can we go a little deeper now on some of the modules, let's say, on what tools you teach for that track of onboarding? You said dot loop is one.
Yeah,
HomeBot. Share HomeBot. Okay.
HomeBot would be one.
What are some of the,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know, what are the modules, what are the tools you're teaching people how to use the actual, basically probably software to do their jobs?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, so the module would be, say, like a dot loop would be an obvious one.
The agents all get a Real Geeks account for their CRM?
Yeah. So HomeBot, and then say, let's go Real Geeks. Okay. So, so when I said in the beginning, we're on body, need a bio and a picture, that's so that we could build out their pages on Real Geeks. So that's the purpose, is we're getting them built out on Real Geeks. But there's also the Century 21 provided websites and whatnot. We got to make sure that there's a second bio and we can use the same picture. We don't use the same bio. And then we put that on the Century 21 provided websites. And basically, as long as they provide that, then the VA will build out the website for them on both of these scenarios. But let's take Real Geeks, for instance. So Real Geeks, we have our own onboarding for Real Geeks itself. So let's go and say, I've got an agent that's been licensed at another company, and they kind of understand, they've already in the MLS and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that they don't really have to do. And that agent wants to get some buyer leads. Okay, well, then we have onboarding. We have Real Geeks onboarding, or it's buyer focused onboarding, which has an additional module of a course that teaches them Real Geeks, how to use Real Geeks, best practices for Real Geeks, how to import your database, or give us this database, we'll import it for you because they won't tag it properly. But we have all these different things: how to work a lead, expectations on speed to lead, expectations for follow-up with the lead. If you don't follow up, what will we do with the lead? Transfer it. If you don't log into the Real Geeks website for so many hours or so many days, what do we do? Take you off a lead flow. We're going through all these scenarios, and we built that out in video form. So you could be an agent that has some experience, come here, and I'll put you in the buyer side coaching, but you could not receive a company lead, buyer lead, until you have actually completed the Real Geeks onboarding program, which can be done 4 or 5 days. 4 or 5 days it would take you, because you would have to set up an appointment with one of my managers that focuses on leads and make sure that you understand things and whatnot. But so every system that we have, for the most part, we have some sort of onboarding or some sort of video course on it.
Every piece of software, I think what Greg's is saying is there's so much software, and you probably join Greg's team and you get a license to this and a license to this and a license to this. And these are the value accounts. Yeah, these are the value propositions of working for Greg for a split, as somebody would probably work for you, but they've never used this software before and are clueless. And that's the tools track, which applies to everybody, regardless if they go down the buyer or the seller path. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the buyer and seller path, but before I do, Greg, you're a busy guy. Can you give the audience, understanding everyone here is in production, has to sell houses, how in the world would they start by putting something like this together based upon your experience with limited resources?
So it doesn't take a lot of money. So I would start with a Google Doc, a Google Doc, a smart sheet, and I would just take the things that you're already doing, assuming that you've had to go through and do this kind of more of a manual process. You just kind of document everything that you're doing and start there. You don't necessarily have to create a bunch of new stuff. You could actually just take what you're doing and document that, and then let somebody else, and then let a virtual assistant own the tasks. Because most of the tasks are not necessarily does not necessarily require high skills. It requires attention. It requires a bit of micromanaging. But what we have to do as the leader at this point, we have to get all of this stuff in some sort of list form. So then we can then leverage somebody like a virtual assistant to manage those tasks. So that
were you able to do that? Do you have the skill, Greg, to sit down and put those lists together by yourself?
That's not how I would. No, the answer is no. But what I do have the skill is is to share a vision with somebody that has the skill and of discipline, focus, and detail. So I think I have a skill of being able to articulate the picture that I see in my head. And then if I'm dealing with the right staff that has skills for operations, then I feel like I'm good at communicating with them what I would like it to look like. But I think where my best skill is once I communicate it, it doesn't have to look like I think it needs to look like. It just has to look like whatever they feel like it needs to look like, as long as it's effective. And that's what's important, is I can paint the picture and then I can turn it over, and I don't have to be attached to it looking just like me. I don't have to control it. I can give them the freedom to create it, because all I did was sit in a huge room in my office with probably a 15 to 20 foot whiteboard. And I sat in a chair and my staff sat up at the whiteboard, and I said, okay, well, first let's do this. Then let's do this, then do this. And they were writing on sticky notes and they were putting it here, and then they put it here, and then they switched these around. And I said, no, I think we need to talk about this before we talk about that. I don't even think I want to talk about that. And we basically on a whiteboard, we did nothing more than create the entire program with sticky notes. Then she took pictures of the sticky notes. She went back to her office, created an outline, and that outline was my checklist of all the content I need to create. I then created all the content on videos. I then put it Dropboxed it to her, and she put it all together.
Greg, that was the most valuable piece of the interview.
Thanks, man. You ask good questions.
That was the most marked timestamp that in the YouTube comments, everybody. But that's the challenge. You have somebody who's great at sales and marketing and scatterbrained and vision, and forcing them to start writing things down in a spreadsheet and lining up the dominoes is a huge mental shift, especially trying to do that when you have fires and building the plane while you're flying it, metaphor. And
I'm so glad you asked this question, because because that's exactly how I didn't do it. I didn't do that, and I would not have effectively done that.
Yeah. And then you wrote the outline after, because you didn't know in your head what you wanted, and the sticky notes helped you organize your thoughts and you could visually see it.
Yes.
And then once you had it organized, you could put it into a spreadsheet. Now it's like, oh my gosh, now I have an effective outline. Boom. Now it's easy for me to record those videos.
Yes. Exactly.
Which can be just as easily as firing up Zoom and recording a video on Zoom. That's how everyone does it now. It's so much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
No need for a camera and you don't need all that crap, do you?
Yeah. Nope. That's it.
Okay.
That's exactly what we did, and that's exactly how I would coach somebody to do it.
And I also heard you don't have one of these fancy learning management systems. It sounds like these are all just folders in a Dropbox with videos.
No. Okay.
Or do you have a fancy LMS?
I don't know what an LMS is. What's
learning management system? It's like like a teachable website, content delivery platform.
I do have I call it a membership site. So I have basically a membership site that's very robust. It's only used for my agents. Other people don't have access to it. And all my agents get a login, and then everything's nicely organized in there, so we can fire off courses. But then every call that I've done, like every Tuesday coaching call that I've done for the last probably 6 or 7 years, is all archived in there. So when an agent comes in, they get a free membership to that membership site. And when they're done with onboarding, you're going to see agents are going to go in, because my coaching calls are segmented and by buyer conversations, seller conversations, mindset conversations. So they can go to all these categories, and then they can go in and start watching videos and archived audios that I've done for many, many years on those subjects. So that's part of our value add too, is by giving them a robust library of content.
That's awesome. I'll give the audience a couple of and again, don't get caught up in the software. I mean, you have to go with what Greg shared of like sitting in a room. I love the sticky notes. I love everything you shared up to that point. You have to create the content. And at the very last thing you do, if just putting the the content in a Dropbox isn't ideal for you, is you get some type of software like Greg has. I'll throw out Process Street. I'll throw out Trainual. What we use at Viral, we have Teachable, or kind of like these little membership sites that
I'm using Thinkific for real estate sales solutions. So for some of our paid courses, I'm using Thinkific.
Thinkific.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Create, market, and sell courses. Perfect.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those. They call those membership sites or learning management tools.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Great. So HR, everyone goes through. Then everyone's going through software tools, learning that. And I love how there's a VA on them the whole time, proactively making sure it's getting done and following up. And you said something very insightful to me, how it wasn't, these aren't necessarily creative or strategic things. It's just, you need somebody making it actionable and holding them accountable through it. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So now they go down, let's say the buyer path. Or let me ask you this question before we go down the seller or the buyer path. Of the agents you bring on in a year, what percent go down the seller path and what percent go down the buyer path? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would probably say 80% go down the buyer path and 20% go down the seller path.
Fair enough, by what I expected. So let's start with the buyer path.
Okay.
So what are the modules of the buyer path that go down? What do you have them do as they take their buyer training after they completed HR and probably while they're taking their systems and tools training?
The first thing they'll do is they'll go through what we're going to call our Real Geeks onboarding. Okay. Now, Real Geeks onboarding, it kind of crosses the line between a system and a tool and actual coaching. But so we put the Real Geeks in the third phase of training and coaching of the onboarding, because it really impacts and influences one's revenue. I mean, there's a lot of money that's going to be influenced by how somebody uses our Real Geek system. In other words, we need to know, all of our leads are going to go through Real Geeks. Our leads are going to get routed through Real Geeks. The agent's going to receive it. So from there, we're going to start talking to them about, this is what you do when you receive a lead. You call that lead immediately, right? And then so then if they don't answer, then you go into Real Geeks and you click a button and you fire off this workflow. And then that workflow will then call them, or not call them, will then text them and email them multiple times. And then with the expectation that we're probably going to get a 70% response rate. And then what do you do when you get a response? You call them immediately. So we're walking through that. What do you say when you were, on the first call? What we're going to train them that, the way that things have shifted now, it's shifted years ago, but it's no longer, hey, I want to see if I can help you, with information on a property. Have you been pre-qualified yet? Like, you can't do that. You have to say, hey, I noticed that you were inquiring about a property. I have some availability. When would you like to take a look at it? Would you like to try to take a look at it this afternoon, or tomorrow be better? Like, we're training that type of language. In other words, set the appointment and then start backing up and talking about if you're qualified, giving them details. Even if the property's pending, set the appointment so you can get all the information. That's why people are calling. That'd be an example of the conversation that I'd have with buyer training, as well as you talk to them, they're 6 months out, tag them like this, or they're 2 months out, tag them like this. They haven't talked to a lender, send a message to the lender. We're going to go through, that's going to be a onboarding of buyers. Now, we could go on and on and on about follow-up, how to properly set your searches when you see that people are looking at properties in Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, Pawleys Island, Conway, spread out everywhere, then we know that if they're getting all of those alerts every time a property's coming on, that buyer is probably being bombarded by alerts, and they're probably going to tune it out and stop looking at all of our emails. So I'm going to train the agent to call that person and see if they can refine their search, go back in, refine their search, narrow it down so it's much more relevant to the buyer. That would be the subject. I mean, and we could go on and on and on, but yeah. Hopefully that gave you.
There's 45 lessons to go on and on, right?
Sure.
But I think what's important is when you created the training, you did your best to keep it evergreen. That was a distinction.
That was critical.
That was hard, because it's easy to just teach for the now, but you realize these training videos need to last a couple of years.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. What's the goal by the time they finish the buyer agent training? Is there like I want you to accomplish X?
They're in our minds, if they have finished the buyer training, they are now qualified to receive our leads. So I'm now trusting that they have the information, and they've demonstrated through, for example, we part of it is we have a pond. So there's Real Geeks has a pond. So let's just say that there's some leads that are not active. Then we'll push them to the pond. And then a new agent goes through our onboarding. We then assign 200 leads from the pond into their account. They then call all of those leads. So we're putting those leads. And then we're working with them and saying, hey, do this, do that, do that. So by the time they get through, they would have actually called all 200 of those leads. So now we know that they know how to change statuses, tag, update.
You don't give them the better leads until they complete the 90 days.
They have to outbound call through the pond. And there's always good leads in the pond.
Let me ask a clarification question. So when they start the 90 days of buyer training, you give them the 200 leads up front, or do you give them the 200 leads at the end of the buyer training?
Yeah, up front.
Okay,
that would be
because they got to have something to work on while they're going.
That's right. Yeah. So at the 90 days, they don't have to wait 90 days before they start real estate. No. I'm just going to say this is 90 days of constant contact to get them up on.
Yeah, here's 200 cheap leads. No one's working yet. Work through them, get good, and then once you complete the training and you complete your 200, you do what you're supposed to do. Then I'll give you the better stuff.
Yes, well, and that's still not at the end of 90 days. That's just one segment. Like, so somebody could be onboarded on buyers and within a week already be getting the brand new leads if they go through the system and quickly.
That's great.
It doesn't take 90 days. It could be a week. So don't confuse the 90 days. The 90 days is just, in my mind, I built out enough content to kind of get them up to speed in 90 days, which is like a 90-day cycle, 90 days to momentum.
But someone could rush through that and crush it in a week.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many people? Hey, Greg, how many people? How many people? Really? I mean, out of all the agents you hire, what percentage would you say
probably about really 30% go like real crazy on it? It's about 3 out of 10. Like they're like, it's work, like they're waiting on us. We're like, whoa, how'd this happen? That type of thing.
Okay.
And guess what? And they do very well. They tend to like go on the attack on everything. Like they're really hungry and motivated. They tend to do very well. It's a good sign when somebody's really, really doing it fast, assuming that they're not just skipping, that like they're really taking it serious, but they're spending hours and hours on it.
But is there a way to track if they're actually watching the videos? Do you have tests or something to know that?
No, I don't. I don't. No, I don't.
But you just kind of, you figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, I refuse. Well, if it was easy, I guess I would, but that to me is just like, look, I mean, if that's what they're doing, then they're going to end up.
Gonna last.
They're not going to last anyways.
Just curious. All right. So at the end of the buyer agent training, which could last 90 days or a week, and they've completed the tools training on that separate track, now they get some better leads because they've gone through their 200. What's next? Is there anything further down the buyer track after the first we talked about?
Well, no, they would go through the buyer track wouldn't be 90 days. I mean, the buyer and all onboarding would be 90 days.
Okay.
So, but after they're done with the buyers, they would probably shift over and start learning the sellers.
Side. Well, let's go to that. All right. So let's go down the seller path. What do they learn?
First thing I want to teach them is the language, the language of sellers, listing presentation. So we're going to have videos on, I think it's Brendan that actually did the listing presentation on video. And that's so that there's an example of 1 or 2 people doing listing presentations. And then there's the listing presentation script. There's the handling objection dialogues. There's me doing a video, talking on a video about the handling objections, and not just role playing an objection, but talking about the kind of the why do we use this script versus this script? Why do we say this at this time? When somebody asks you, will you cut the commission? That's just a question. Don't handle a question as if it was an objection. You answer questions. No, you don't handle a question with an objection handler. So I'm going to go through that type of conversation, and then I'm going to suggest that they memorize that stuff, they role play that stuff. I'm going to be talking about pricing. Here's a great way to present price. The value of giving a seller options, but making sure that the options that you're giving them, even if they chose the highest option, you're perfectly happy and still motivated to take that listing. Don't give them an option that you're not willing to actually, take the listing on, but give them their options, show them their net, and then ask them based on time frame and what you're going to get in your pocket, which price do you feel is best for you in your situation? So I'm breaking down how to present price, how to do the full listing presentation, the value of presenting at the kitchen table versus presenting on the couch. I'm just going over and over and over. See that's stuff, that's evergreen. Detail. That's evergreen.
Yeah. Extreme detail too.
Yeah.
On the buy side, you said you load up 200 people from the pool archives of Real Geeks. What do you give them for seller leads? What do you teach them to do to get going on calls for sellers?
It'd be their centers of influence is basically what they would be doing, or we would have old seller leads in the database also, people that may have opted in for what's my home worth, people that maybe we've had bold leads accounts that we have thousands, and I think I have 6,000 people in it's probably 4,000 people just from bold leads alone. Over the years, that would be kind of like in the pond. So we could then give them some of that, and they can start calling through those, all people that opted in through bold leads.
I'm guessing you allow all your agents, whenever they need people to call, just to go and grab something out of the pond. Is that right?
Yes.
Sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, anybody can grab it out of the pond. Yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your agents, when they start, they're all getting the archive to the pond leads to get going.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. When it comes to centers of influence,
mm-hmm.
Do you give them support with regard to like building that list and getting the phone numbers and getting them into, because that's kind of a hard thing, right? Like, how do you help them get their centers of influence on the seller track into the CRM?
If I don't have a video on this, I will make one now that I thought about this, but I think I do have a video. This is their database. Everybody's database is right here, right? In the beginning, most people that don't have a database, it's right here. So we both know that you can just simply go and get an app and export everything from your phone into an Excel spreadsheet, right? So then I'm training them on that. Go to the App Store, export into Excel, look at the Excel, and then look for missing data. Most of the time, if it's in your phone, you probably have a cell number, but you don't have an email address. So what you want to do is you go in and you see all these centers of influence, these sphere people that you have, acquaintances that you have in your cell phone, and go in and fill in the missing data. So if you have their cell phone, then text them. Hey, Frank, I wanted to send you an email, something on your email or in your email. What's your email address? You're going to text me your email address. Then go to the spreadsheet and then put that in, and just do that one by one. Go through that and clean up this database. Okay. Then once you have that into the database, then we're going to say, okay, once you've done that, then we'll give you a HomeBot account. Okay, so we buy all of our agents' HomeBots accounts, but if they now have cleaned up their data, they have the property address, the name, the telephone number, and the email address, then we would then give them, activate their HomeBot account. We then import that, the VA will import that into HomeBot for them, fire all those things out, and then of course we have training on HomeBot on how you convert from there.
The HomeBot is the excuse of why they're calling to put them on the homeowner updates.
There you go.
Got it. It's not you spending money necessarily on leads for them for it. When does that ever come into play as a part of your value proposition?
Ask that again.
I guess my question is, if you give all your agents a HomeBot account, do you spend money on lead generation on like Facebook or Google ads to drive leads to it? Or is it more of a,
I don't spend it to, I do not spend on Facebook to drive to HomeBot. I will spend on Facebook to drive to Real Geeks. But once, okay, you asked such a good question. So cell phone to spreadsheet to clean spreadsheet to HomeBot to now you have a HomeBot account, put everything in HomeBot. drive traffic to Real Geeks, convert traffic. But what we did is we now have HomeBot integrated with Real Geeks. So with all we have to do when we put somebody into Real Geeks, if we just assign a tag called HomeBot, it automatically pushes it into HomeBot. So if I'm going to drive traffic somewhere, it would be wiser for me to drive it to a Real Geeks website, not to a HomeBot website, because I have way more opportunities to convert the traffic on Real Geeks than I would just capture their information on HomeBot. So I'm going to spend my dollars and direct it to somewhere that I have a higher conversion rate. And then once it gets into Real Geeks, they just assess a tag, and then it automatically goes to, actually the tag is not HomeBot, the tag is seller. They assess a tag seller, and it automatically goes into HomeBot. No initial data, no additional data entry.
Greg, the way your mind works, I think, is very interesting to the audience. And I want to drive this home again. I mean, how often do you meet with your operations person to get these ideas out of your head and executed? Like, I just see you in a room wizarding, and they're all trying to keep up with like tagging and this app's talking to that, putting it all together. Is that the case? Like, you're not sitting in the computer doing this stuff.
Oh, no. I would never know how to do any, what I just said about HomeBot and how they integrated that. No. I'd be the guy that says, we will give them a HomeBot account whenever they have their database.
Well, you're really good at meeting with your staff and explaining this stuff out of your head so they can go and implement.
Yeah. And I want to give some credit to my staff too. They're also, we've worked together long enough that they probably know like how my mind works. So a lot of times the HomeBot integration was, me, it's like, man, I'm tired of this data entry. And then one of my staff members who's is very integral for Real Geeks, they actually called HomeBot and figured it out. I mean, they're good at Zapier. And so they just created a Zap and connected it up. And next thing you know, they're like, hey, we got it figured out. I'm like, okay, cool.
Greg has found his visionary and implementer thing there. So that's,
I've got a few. I've got
a
few of them, and it's awesome.
A couple other questions. So agent gets licensed, kind of wrapping up everything we talked about so far. So agent gets their license. They come to you, say, Greg, guide me. They go through HR. Then they go through the tools and software track. And let's say they go through the buyer agent track. And let's say they go through the seller track. They complete all of it. Got it, they're done. And they do it in a couple of weeks. And you turned on some new buyer leads. You give them some seller leads to call. They're calling. Once all that's done and they're onboarded, what's next after that? Is it just showing up to the Tuesday meetings?
Well, that's going to be on Zoom. So,
okay. Those are live, the newest things going on. But what's after what you shared with so far? What's the next step after that?
It would be fully engaging in all the other training, offerings that we have. So we have a monthly a coaching calendar that kind of displays. Like right now, one of my partner / leadership team, Jan Pittman, she's running a boot camp. Okay. And that boot camp's going to go, I think it's 8 weeks long, and it's on buyer. It's buyer themed. It's 8 weeks long. It's every certain day. I don't know if it's Wednesday or Thursday at a certain time for an hour. And she's got a full blown boot camp that's very well outlined, very well planned, 8 weeks. And she's just coaching them. I mean, it's a course that people should be paying thousands of dollars for. She's just coaching them on that. And so there's always a boot camp of some sort. Usually there's a seller themed boot camp and a buyer themed boot camp every single month. I've got my calls going every Tuesday, and then I'm doing additional videos, or I'm creating additional courses, putting it onto our membership site saying, hey, look, we need to start learning about price reductions because we could have, we're going to see overpriced inventory on the market, not because the market has dropped, because sellers have gotten too overconfident and real estate agents stopped talking about price. So that's why our first wave of overpriced listings is not going to have to do with the market shifting downward. It's going to be where agents and sellers have they just went a little too far. And so there's going to be inventory out there. So maybe I'm going to do a 3-week course on communication with sellers that would involve, what information should you be sending your sellers on a weekly basis? What conversation do you need to have on week 2 of taking a listing? So between the combination of the week 2's call, which is future pacing them for a potential a reevaluation of price, plus you're sending certain bits of data that supports maybe a reevaluation of price, then on week number 3, you actually make the call.
Yeah.
And then
there's a lot.
Yeah.
It's I'm watching your mind work of like how well you know your material.
Mm.
You can, everyone can tell how well he knows it. Like I bet agents looking for direction are like, Greg, I give up, guide me. Just that's how I feel right now watching this. I got a question for you too. So with all that, I get it. So they go through the onboarding, and then there's just a constant, more relevant what's going in the market now training. Whereas the onboarding is evergreen. It can last forever. Then when they graduate that, here's the training calendar that you hop on where we talk about what's going on in the market today.
Yes.
In some type of structured way.
And then I physically work in the office. So I believe, contrary to what a lot of people believe, I believe one of the most effective things that I can do is be around for the GOTA minutes. Where most people are running away from the office because they don't feel like GOTA minutes are effective, like it's not a good use of time. I actually think the opposite. I think GOTA minutes are extremely effective. I think it's some of my best return on time investments that I make. But what's important is that I cannot answer a GOTA minute about a copy machine. Okay, so hey, you got a minute? I'm having a challenge with the copy machine. I'm not talking about those GOTA minutes. So everyone's crystal clear that GOTA minute is going to get you in trouble. Don't ask me that GOTA minute. That I always have a minute, as long as at the end of that minute, the result is possibly going to help you convert something. Convert a listing, convert a negotiation, convert a price reduction, convert a sale, write an offer, whatever it is. If it's a GOTA minute is going to, the result of our GOTA minute can lead us to advancing the ball in some sort of lead generation or transaction part of it, then I have more GOTA minutes than anybody in the world. Because here's what I think. If you say, do you got a minute, even if that GOTA minute takes 5 minutes, and when I'm done training you, if you listen, then you're going to have that tip that I just gave you for the rest of your career. So I might help you convert that one listing tomorrow, but then you're going to take what I shared and probably change your presentation for every presentation you do over the next 5 years. So I'm actually going to be making a return for the next 5 years off of that 5 minutes. I got a minute.
I have more questions. Okay. That's incredibly insightful. You hear, I want to exit my business. I never want to be around. I've been to Greg's office, and Greg's a sergeant in the military. He's there making his calls every morning. He's there talking with his people. He's available for the GOTA minutes. And when I talk to the really big brokers, they are just kind of sitting behind their desk, not maybe too much on their schedule, just available for pop-ins, because the retention at the end of the day is like, I have someone I can go to with questions from like business strategy. And there's the broker they go to with like, contracts, right?
Yeah.
I love hearing that. Here's a question I want to ask you for cost. Let's talk about the money of onboarding and training agents, because I want to get clear on this. What you've been able to do is sit down with your staff, which is, and come up with all these videos and this training that's on this website. And apparently someone can say they want to come work for you. You throw them on the membership site. And the only cost there to keep it running is just the virtual assistant, holding them accountable to get through the training. Right. Yeah. And then what I'm seeing with the future cost is it's all just group training provided. It's all show up to the classes, show up to the group training. That's a conscious decision. Is there any one-on-one handholding? Is there any like one-on-one meetings or staff or management that you had to hire to help people more on a one-to-one level? Or is it all just a VA with group training materials?
So there would be some one-on-one, but it wouldn't be like the traditional one-on-one coaching where it's like, okay, I'm going to do a one-on with you for the next 6 months. It wouldn't be like that. So there could be one-on-one for very short periods of time. Like for instance, there's a younger guy named Hunter, in my office. He was doing maybe, I don't know that he even did a deal with the company that he was with before. Maybe he did one deal, came over with us. I think in the first deal, maybe did 25 or 26 deals, somewhere in that range.
Mhm.
And then he's like, man, I want to be the next 100 deal producer in your company. And I said, okay, well, I tell you what, I'll give you some
So it's a
one-on-one
case
coaching.
by case basis.
100%.
Okay.
It's got to be something that inspires me. Somebody comes up and says, dude, I'm your next 100 deal producer. And I'm like, yes, you are. And you're going to go into my schedule and we're going to get you to 100
come to you,
deals.
they got to request it, but there's no like, when all these agents
It's
come
not
in,
built in. It's not built in.
No.
There's no built-in program for that.
Everything's built in with a virtual assistant, keeping them on track with group training. Is that correct?
Yes. Now I might be the head of the group training. I'm always leading a group training. Somebody else could be leading a different group training, but I am not absent. I am always doing that at every single week. I am in front doing training in some format every single week.
Yeah.
Period.
They always see you, but it's always see you in group. And it's the only one-on-one they get is like a little got a minute for the right question. And if they come to you and they really want the one-on-one they're producing, you'll make the exception.
Yeah, if they really are like serious and like, look, I want to level up. I want to really crush this thing. All right, cool. And I believe them, like, because when I was working for a coaching company, I know this is controversial probably, but it got to a point where I remember I'd get a client, a new coaching client. And in my first conversation with a paying coaching client, they were paying another company. I was just one of their coaches. One of the first, it was Mike Ferry. So, they'd sign up for Mike Ferry. I would be assigned their coach. And the first call was like, hey, I just want to let you know, I want to take 15 minutes of our first call and kind of let you set the expectations and of this call. And I said, here's the deal. I have some rules. Okay. If you don't show up on time, when I call you, if you don't pick up the phone, I will promise you not to dial your phone twice. I will call you one time, you pick up the phone. If I'm not going to dial it twice. Now I understand that there's going to be things that happen and you're 5 minutes late, but if I dial, you don't pick up, I'm gone and you're paying for that 30 minutes. I'm not giving you, I'm not rescheduling. I'm not doing any of that crap. This is the way it's going to be. Number two, when you come to the call, you better inspire me, because if you will inspire me, and the way you're going to inspire me is do what you say. Make commitments, follow through, not succeed, not fail. You're going to make commitments and follow through. That inspires the heck out of me. And if you inspire me, I will come to the call so freaking excited. I will deliver when it comes to the coaching and the content. Yeah. But if you don't inspire me,
don't emotionally drain me on the call.
Yeah, I'm going to I'm checking out. I'm going to be gone. I will hang up and not show up. And then I said, and look, I understand that you could go to the coaching company and complain. And if they fire me, then I'm okay with that too. That this is more of charity in my mind. I enjoy this.
Greg
but when you make it when you make it unenjoyable, I'm out. Yeah. So if somebody comes to me and they're like really serious, I'm like all in on one-on-one coaching them. But those are the rules. It's like, okay, if we're going to do this, I won't even look at the return I'm making. I won't even calculate that. I just want to play on the same court as you. If you are that motivated, I want to play with you. I'm like, I think it's a privilege that they would play with me. So I'll deliver. And then usually we know the results are going to be very high. I mean, I've got a lot of 100 deal and 200 deal producers in my company.
Normally right now we'd be doing overtime. So I want to ask some overtime questions with you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
All right? I think you absolutely delivered on how to onboard an agent. To you, it seems very, because you do it, it's obvious, but the ahas I'm hearing on the other side is I've heard so many other models. Oh, we meet every single day, one-on-one. Everyone gets weekly one-on-one meetings. Oh, we take people through in groups every single month, and they're all different tracks. There's a lot of ahas here. I want to ask you kind of a question that's not necessary to onboarding, but I think it would be helpful to have for this recording is offboarding.
Yeah, we do have offboarding program.
Yes, I would be interested to hear what happens is Greg, I want to leave the company. Real estate isn't for me anymore. I want to go switch. And I've made my decision.
Hmm.
What happens?
Well, usually they disappear, right? They usually don't. That's like very rare that happens. Usually they're just gone, and you get
Okay.
the MLS notification or the real estate commission notification. I will say, full disclosure, I did not create the offboarding program, but I do understand. Like in the offboarding program, one of the first things that they're going to do is the staff is going to do is they're going to pull them off the website. So they have to kind of reverse all of the website to stuff, take the bio off, delete the their profile page, and there'll be multiple websites that these people could be on. So there's a lot of detail there that the VAs would be reversing that stuff, taking that off. Okay, then you're going to have there'll be a quick analysis on the listings, and somebody's going to the broker will probably be calling those listings to be in communication, let them know what has occurred. The closing department is going to kind of be notified so they understand how to handle the pendings at that point. The agents are still going to make their money, but they're going to go ahead and talk to that agent, try to figure out how are we going to coordinate this so the consumer is not affected at any levels. And then they start shutting off all the passwords of all the different CRMs and all those scenarios, just to make sure that there's nobody going to go in and be able to take anything from that point moving forward. Again, I did not create all that. My team created this because, of course, we do have people sometimes that will no longer be with the company. And all they did was just organize and automate to the best of their ability.
What about notifying the clients? Do you have anything about notifying clients, how you handle that?
Yeah, that would be the broker that would be actual phone calls that would be made. So the broker, who I'm not the broker would be notified, and then that would trigger those calls.
Yeah.
But yes, we did feel it is efficient and to have an offboarding. It's just efficient to have a playbook, right? And I mean, the whole thing is all about just kind of organizing this, that if this happens, then just do this. And so it takes the thinking out of it. It's just like, okay, it's just, I can just go and get this all done instead of like trying to figure, oh, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? That's where a lot of time's wasted.
I want to ask you this. I'm going to wrap up the interview here. So this really is an interview on like creating an operations manual and sitting down and writing your business processes. We all hear this, and everybody watching this gets it. I want to hear the humanity of kind of like, how do you actually find time and get yourself into a mental space in the middle of the chaos to actually carve out of your week to actually focus and do this? And you gave me something so great in this interview about how you sat in this room with the big whiteboard with the post-it notes. And hopefully we timestamp. Somebody was watching this, please timestamp where I said that was the best part of the interview with Greg, and put it in the comments. All right. Is there any other wisdom you can give us in your years of business of actually putting this stuff together? Like from a human standpoint, people need to get this stuff done, but they don't. How do they get it done, Greg?
I think it really comes down to it's priority. It's priority. It's having the business maturity to understand that when somebody says I need to work on the business, not always in the business, that saying is used so often. And I think that it requires a level of business maturity to understand that saying, not just a cliche, that's extremely important. And I know where my mind is, because I would rather go and work on old classic cars or go play tennis a lot of times than do stuff like this. But if I don't make this a priority, a lot of people suffer. And my ultimate goal is to create, just in my Myrtle Beach office, my ultimate goal is to create 30 millionaires. Okay. And I've created many millionaires just out of Myrtle Beach alone, and in other areas, but that's like a goal. So when you think of like, my goal is to create and develop and help these people reach such high levels, then this is what's required. And I think I started the conversation this way, Frank. I said, look, I think people need to know that most people are building onboarding programs to make my life easier, No, I'm building onboarding programs to make their lives easier, to make their lives more profitable, to make them more successful. And maybe that's just a characteristic about me. And some people may not share that, some people may. But when I make it about their growth, then I'm a little bit more inspired to get these things done and make it a priority. When I make it, I'm the only one that's going to benefit. Those are the things that Greg Harrelson never gets done. I seem to get the things done that matter to others more than I get done. And I think that's a mindset. When you have that mindset and you shift there, then you'll be a little bit more inspired to do these things. I see the true value. Like this onboarding program is going to change somebody's life in my company. I got to get it done.
God,
if this just going to change my life, whatever.
When I asked you to deliver some wisdom, you delivered. God, Greg, thank you for doing these. No, that's great. It's so true. You get so stressed out. I want all this done. And where's my money? And where's the ROI? And me. And you go into the training and you go into the selfish mindset. And yeah, it suffers for everyone. And if you switch that mindset of how can I make this easier for them, it just totally switches the philosophy of going out and building this, where it's almost like a calling and a mission of helping others and makes it easier.
Yeah. And see, we've all heard these things. Like I remember my buddy Thatch out of Seattle. I mean, he used to say early on, like there's a direct correlation between the wealth he accumulates and the impact that he makes on people. Then I've heard John Maxwell use a variation of like, you grow through others, or I can't remember. I think Zig Ziglar was saying something like that. Like there's so many people, we've heard this from so many leaders. It's time to live it.
Yeah.
See, like knowing these little sayings will not have an impact on your life. Living these sayings, I promise you, you'll get everything you want when you help other people. You got to.
That's such a great place to end the interview right there. And we have one question here I'm going to ask from Jason, but I guess what I was asking you in that original question was, where did you find the motivation and the inspiration to do something arguably for so many people is so painful, which is to create the onboarding process? And it all starts with what you just said right there, of making it easier for them. And if you start with that premise, everything you discussed in the interview today should go easier, and it's easier to make the priority. So Greg, thank you on that, man. That was really good. All right.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Let's ask Jason. Jason has a great question. Greg, when onboarding buyer-focused agents, is there a particular area where you see agents fail to complete or get stuck moving forward? Like such as, for example, not calling or stop watching the training videos. Where do they get stuck in your onboarding?
Where do they get stuck? That's a great question. I wish I would have asked that to my virtual assistant, because by the way, I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to go back and say, when they do get stuck, my virtual assistants will see that and they will keep nudging them. So they'll nudge them. So just know that when they complete lesson 22 and there's a big gap between lesson 23, they will nudge them.
How do they know that? How does the VA know that?
Because they see that in the progression on the membership site.
Oh, because as they complete and watch the training, it marks it off.
That's right. It marks it off.
That's the beauty of the membership site, not a Google Drive.
That's right. That's where it's advanced. I would say, where they get stuck is when they start making calls. And then they start making calls to those 200 buyers, and then they have to go show a property. And then they're like, oh my God, I've arrived. I've got business now. And then all of a sudden, it's like, as soon as they have some little bit of success in those early conversations, they get like, I got to do this research. I got to go drive by all these properties because I want to see them. I've never seen these buildings. I've never seen these neighborhoods. They get, and I like all that, by the way. I like that they're doing that. But then they go overboard in all that, and they don't have any time to complete the next module. That's kind of where they get stuck. I would say it's not as much as what is the title that they get stuck on. I would say it's more of what is what takes them off track.
Greg, I see in your future when you retire, if you do, you'll be a professor at a with a given degree in human psychology and human behavior.
Yeah,
And you're saying my entire life, I thought I was in the real estate sales business. I thought I was a sales trainer, but really, I am the master in the trenches of human behavior and human psychology. And you could teach a master's course on it, like at some type of college, because that's what this all is.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good
Yeah.
observation there. It is. And and all of us have the talent. I think that we don't use it. And most of this stuff comes from, even though, whether you think I'm a good talker or not a good talker, I can talk, meaning I can talk a lot. Where people make the mistake with me is they don't realize how good of a listener I am. And I am very strategic about listening. I really process very fast, and I listen and listen and listen way beyond the words. And I think that over time, developing that skill has helped me kind of understand at a much deeper level, within the real estate conversation, what's really going on, whether it's with a buyer, seller, or whether it's training conversations with a real estate agent. Real estate agent comes to me and says, "This is my challenge." And I'm like, just based on what you just said and how you looked, that's not your challenge. That's an absolute lie.
This is the first lesson of your college course, listening, human behavior. It's good. We're building it.
Yeah.
Well, in the interview there, that was Greg, you delivered. Thank you so much today. And thank you all for watching today on Keeping It Real. The replay will be right here on the YouTube channel for you to watch. It'll be up on keepingitreal.com with a full write-up. So you can kind of maybe go to some different spaces. I think they do a pretty good job of putting some timestamps in so you can jump around to some of the key things that Greg said. Mm-hmm. But if you, like I said, if you're looking to onboard an agent, you got some really good advice here. So I want to thank you so much for watching. Greg, thanks for doing this. And go check out Real Geeks. If you're looking for a CRM to bring your whole team together to track all the leads, realgeeks.com. Go get yourself a demo. Greg, thanks for your time today. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you on the next Keeping It Real.